All right, Tabosai, good morning. Let us begin. So we are continuing today in Tzidkas Hatzaddik, Os Samech Beis. It's the same piece that we were doing last week. And just to reorient ourselves a little bit, what Rabbi Silber was referring to over here, what he was discussing over here, was the notion that over the ages you have certain righteous individuals, certain tzaddikim, who represented or embodied certain midos or traits. They then passed down those particular traits to their mishpachos, to their families, and then subsequently, once those traits became embedded in those families, ultimately, again, they became the purview, or they became accessible to regular individuals as well. So what we're doing over the course of Os Samech Beis is going through these primary characteristics, going through these primary traits of different individuals. So we started last week with the midah of tzidkus, of being a tzaddik. So I'm picking up on page Kuf Nun. So we read a lot of this. We read a lot of this already. So if you remember again, Rabbi Silber spoke about the idea that Mailas Shem Tzaddik. So let's just take a look. Page Kuf Nun, Be'uriach Hasidus, left hand column. Umalos Shem Tzaddik. The Maila of being a tzaddik, Tahainu Shomer Habris, Zocha Ba Seif Hatzaddik. So remember again, the Rabbi Silber explained. Rabbi Silber explained that the Maila of Tzidkus represents the idea of sexual purity. And who embodies this idea? None other than Seif Hatzaddik. And we spoke about this idea last week, meaning that Seif Hatzaddik, bombarded by constant temptation, but yet the ability to go ahead and hold strong, the ability to go ahead and abstain, the ability to go ahead and exhibit moral strength in the face of incredible moral adversity. That, says Rabbi Silber, is the notion of tzidkus. He calls it shmira. In Chasidus, this is called shmiras habris. So the bris, of course, referring to the makom milah, and ultimately shmiras habris means maintaining the sanctity of the makom milah, maintaining the sanctity of sexuality. So Rabbi Silber then went on and he explained that this is why Yosef has the ability, only the offspring of Yosef, have the ability to go ahead and defeat Amalek. Because what's the midah of Amalek? So the Rebbe explains that the midah of Amalek is his akshus neged ratzon Hashem, is like an abstinence against the will of God. Right? The entire essence of Amalek is the throwing off of the yoke of God. The whole essence of Amalek is there is no Ribono Shel Olam. Everything is mikra, nothing matters, everything is chance and happenstance, and no matter what happens in the world, Amalek refuses to yield to the reality and to the existence of the Ribono Shel Olam. So, amazingly enough, Amalek and Yosef have the same exact koach. It's the same strength. They just use it different ways. What does Yosef do? Yosef's akshus is not against the Ratzon Hashem, but rather Yosef's akshus is for the Ratzon Hashem, right? No matter what happens to Yosef, Yosef will not yield. Yosef will not give in. Yosef will not lose himself in temptation. So it's the same exact midah. It's the same exact character trait. Yet, interestingly enough, just used fundamentally different ways. So Rabbi Silber goes on. He says, if you look on page Kuf Nun, Be'uriach Hasidus, last line. V'chei mavur ma'amer Rabbeinu Zal, quotes over the Gemara Maseches Brachos that says very beautifully, Shebizara di Yosef lo shalta eina bisha. We'll say another aspect of Yosef is that the offspring of Yosef, ayin hara, what he calls eina bisha, ayin hara, has no power over the offspring of Yosef. Now what does this mean? Ein ayin hara, so on page Kuf Nun Aleph now, ein ayin hara, shalat es bahen, mecheivan, shekmo shem shomrim es einehem, v'nimnoim meliros b'tayv ha'olam hazeh, kach midah kineged midah, ein ha'ayin shalat es. So we'll say this is beautiful. What's ayin hara? Right? What's ayin hara? So on a very basic level, right? The truth is, ayin hara is defined in different ways for different people. But in different ways by different people, by different commentaries. But one basic idea of ayin hara is like this: if I have a particular bracha in my life, I have a particular bracha, whatever it may be, and I conduct myself with my brachos in a way which elicits pain from someone else. So let's say, for example, a person, K'nai Nahara, has a family, and a person never stops talking about their kids, always talking about their kids, to anyone and to everyone. And I'm conversing with someone who, Rahman al-Islam, doesn't have children, can't have children, whatever the mitzias might be. So I'm taking something that's a bracha for me, and now it's becoming a source of pain for someone else. Or a person, Baruch Hashem, is blessed with affluence, and then what happens? They flaunt it in a way which is ostentatious and ultimately hurts others who may be struggling in that very area. What ends up happening under those circumstances is the Beis Din Shlamala says, well, wait 1 second. We gave Ploni this bracha, and now Ploni is using this bracha in a way which hurts someone else. That ultimately causes the Beis Din Shlamala to want to take back that particular bracha. That's the notion of ayin hara. There are other applications and other manifestations of it as well, but that's most basic idea. But I will say, so says Rabbi Silber something amazing, that halacha l'maisa, the concept of ayin hara, doesn't apply to the offspring of Yosef. Isn't that incredible? Why doesn't it apply to the offspring of Yosef? So Rabbi Silber says it's a midah keneged midah. The offspring of Yosef were careful with their shmiras einayim. Right? Yosef was careful with not looking at Eshes Potiphar. He was careful ultimately again of trying to avoid gazing upon her lustfully. So because Yosef was careful with shmiras einayim, because Yosef was careful ultimately again with what he gazed at, therefore the power of ayin hara is limited in its ability to impact Yosef. Isn't that incredible? So the midah keneged midah, the tzidkus of Yosef, ultimately again caused him to go ahead and be careful what he looked at, and because he's careful with what he looked at, therefore again ayin hara only has a limited ability to impact him. Kach midah keneged midah ein ha'ayin sholetas bohem. So to midah keneged midah, ayin hara does not have an impact on Yosef. V'afa pi shene'emar v'amech kulam tzadikim. Even though the pasuk in Yeshaya says, the pasuk says, "Va'amech kulam tzadikim," which means your nation. I will say this is how we begin every parak in Pirkei Avos. Va'amech kulam tzadikim, your nation is all righteous. Da'ainu shekol mishu miYisrael nikra tzadik. And I will say that pasuk indicates to us that anyone who is a Jew is called a tzaddik. So it doesn't sound like it's the unique purview of Yosef, but it sounds like every Jew is a tzaddik. So how do you reconcile that? Rabbi Silber says, it's not a problem. He says, Imkein mavur, Shemaylas Hatzaddik mitzuya, gam b'shar hashvatim v'lo rak b'vnei Yosef. All the pasuk is saying is that the midah of tzidkus is not only found by Yosef, but rather it can be found by all of the shvatim. Ulam mikol makom ikaro shal hakoach liyos tzaddik hu b'zara di Yosef. So also this is in line with what Rabbi Tzaddik said before. So here he explains it as the ikar koach, the ikar ability of a person to be a tzaddik resides with Yosef. But the truth is, we could take this a step further, kind of going back a little bit to what Rabbi Tzaddik said before, which is that halacha l'maisa, Yosef was the first to really cultivate this midah of tzidkos. He was the first. But after he cultivated it, then what? Everyone has the ability to access it. So we'll say this is the midah, says Reb Tzaddik, of tzidkos, the midah of sexual purity, the midah of the ability to go ahead and exhibit incredible moral strength in the face of incredible temptation. It also translates, says Reb Tzaddik, into shmiras ha'inayim, being careful with what we look at. And here Reb Tzaddik says something amazing. Just the koach of shmiras ha'inayim is that if I'm careful with what I look at, if I'm careful with what my eyes take in, then ultimately, again, that stems the ability of ayin hara to have an impact on me. That's the midah keneged midah. This was primarily the midah of Yosef, then it becomes the midah of his mishpacha, and now ultimately becomes accessible to all of Am Yisrael, va'amech kulam tzadikim. Incredible. We'll say, let's begin the next part, just a little bit of line. Shem Chasid, Zacha Bo David. We'll say next midah. Next midah is the midah of Chasidus. Now, what I want to point out to you, something very interesting, is that the midah of Chasidus is also a lot of these midos lend themselves to multiple layers of interpretation. For example, the Ramchal, Ramosh Chaim Latzato, in Mesilas Yesharim, we learned this a long time ago. So the Ramchal points out, he says, what's the definition of the midah of Chasidus? He says that it's someone who goes lifnim mishuras hadin. A chassid is someone who goes above and beyond expectations. In other words, so the way that the Ramchal understands it is like this: mitzvos are indicative of things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu likes, so to speak. Right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives me a particular mitzvah. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying is, this is an area that's important to me. So again, a regular person, which is no small accomplishment to be a regular person also, goes in and says, okay, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm going to do the mitzvahs, I'm going to go ahead and keep the mitzvahs. Okay? The Chassid says that a mitzvah represents something that is near and dear to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How can I build on that even more? That's what the Chassid does. So for example, I see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells me to lend money, which means Hashem wants me to look out for the other. That's the expression of divine intent. How can I go ahead and take that even further? How can I go ahead and do that even to a greater degree? That's what the Chassid does. The Chassid takes the Ratzon Hashem and goes ahead and amplifies it. So whereas a regular Jew is just simply obligated to go ahead and fulfill the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and do what the Ribono Shel Olam asks, the Chassid says, let me figure out how to go above and beyond for the Ribono Shel Olam. We're going to see, we'll stop over here for today now, but we're going to see in Mirz Hashem that Rabbi Tzaddik is going to have a little bit of a different definition of Chasidus, and we'll pick up with this in Mirz Hashem tomorrow. Shkach, I will say.